I worked hard to cook this. Just pack it up and take it with you, my mother-in-law insisted firmly. I wasn't sure why she was so eager for me to have it, but I responded politely, "All right, thank you very much." The moment those words left my mouth, my father-in-law suddenly collapsed from his chair. We all turned in shock, watching him clutch his stomach in pain. "What's wrong?" my husband exclaimed. "What's happening?" "I just tasted a little of the food in the kitchen, my stomach. It hurts so much," my father-in-law groaned. "You ate some?" my mother-in-law asked, her voice tinged with panic. Her reaction immediately caught my attention. "My name is Aubrey. I'm 28 years old and a housewife. My husband Jim and I got married last year. Since we're the same age, we share similar values and understand each other well. Our relationship has remained just as strong after marriage as it was when we were dating. However, there was one thing that concerned me when we got married. When we visited my in-laws to formally greet them after the wedding, my mother-in-law's traditional mindset quickly became apparent. "When you get married, you'll be moving in with us, right?" she asked, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. My husband and I exchanged a glance and responded in unison, "What?" We had no plans of living with them, so Jim firmly replied, "No, we want to build our life together, just the two of us." My mother-in-law's face darkened. "What? Why? You're the eldest son." My husband and I were taken aback, but before the conversation became too tense, my father-in-law stepped in. "That's an old-fashioned way of thinking," he said. "Jim and Aubrey should live how they want." His words seemed to calm my mother-in-law down, but another issue quickly surfaced. My husband and I had decided not to have a wedding ceremony. I don't enjoy extravagant events, and we had agreed to use the money for travel instead. When I shared this with my in-laws, my mother-in-law's expression turned pale. "What do you mean, no wedding?" she demanded. As I soon realized, she had a rigid mindset. She was completely against the idea of skipping a wedding. "How are we supposed to explain this to our relatives?" she asked, clearly upset. To her, the eldest son's wedding was an important event, and any deviation from tradition was unacceptable. However, once again, my father-in-law defended us. "The relatives don't care about the wedding itself," he said. "They just want an excuse for a big meal. If there's no wedding, they'll forget about it soon enough." Thanks to his support, we didn't have to go through with a wedding just to please others. My mother-in-law, however, was far from pleased. Despite her objections, we got married without a ceremony and began our life together. As a housewife, I found joy in managing our home and preparing meals for my husband. I looked forward to starting a family one day. A couple of months into our marriage, my in-laws invited us over. Given the earlier disagreements with my mother-in-law, we were a bit apprehensive, but since we hadn't seen them since the wedding, we decided to go. I expected some tension, but surprisingly, my mother-in-law was warm and welcoming. "If you need any advice about running a household, don't hesitate to ask," she said kindly. "I have plenty of recipes to share." She had a passion for cooking and often hosted gatherings for neighbors. That day, she prepared a home-cooked meal for us, and I had to admit, it was delicious. Her kindness made me question whether my initial worries had been unnecessary. Even my husband seemed relieved. "It won't be a problem to visit them once in a while," he said. A few months later, we were invited to a dinner party at their house. Since our last visit had gone well, we happily accepted. My mother-in-law served an elaborate meal, filled with dishes that looked like they belonged in high-end restaurants. "You've really improved your cooking," my husband praised her. "You never made anything like this when I was younger. Everything tastes amazing. Thank you for putting so much effort into it." Beaming with pride, my mother-in-law responded, "Eat as much as you'd like." It was an enjoyable evening until later that night. A terrible stomachache hit me out of nowhere. As I sat in the bathroom, waves of nausea and dizziness overcame me. "Aubrey, are you okay?" My husband called from outside the door, his voice full of concern. His words became a blur as I lost consciousness. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. Jim had called an ambulance and I had been rushed to the hospital. Yet, the doctors couldn't determine the cause. "It doesn't seem to be food poisoning," one of them told me. I wondered if the rich food had simply been too much for me. After receiving an IV and some rest, I felt better, and my husband took me home. "What on earth happened?" I murmured to myself. Everything seemed fine, until 2 months later when the same thing happened again. I got sick, and the only thing in common was that I had eaten my mother-in-law's food, but strangely my husband, who ate the same dishes, felt completely fine. Then it happened again a month later. I invited a friend over to discuss the situation. Maybe it's stress, she suggested. Her words made me uneasy. I thought I was comfortable around my mother-in-law, but perhaps, deep down, I was more anxious than I realized. It was undeniable that every time I ate at her house, I got sick. Jim started worrying as well. One evening he suggested, "Let's take a break from visiting them for a while." I don't know why, but this always happens after eating my mother's cooking. I hesitated but agreed. From then on, whenever my mother-in-law invited us for dinner, Jim declined, prioritizing my health. After some time we received another invitation, one we couldn't refuse. My brother-in-law and his wife were visiting to give their wedding greetings. I had been feeling better since avoiding my in-laws' food, and I was nervous about going back. "Just eat lightly," my husband advised. I took his words to heart. When the day arrived, my mother-in-law greeted us warmly. She seemed just as kind and welcoming as ever, at least as long as we were only talking. I wasn't feeling sick at that moment, but I couldn't shake the thought of what had been causing my illness every time I visited my in-laws. No matter how much I thought about it, I kept coming back to the same possibility: something in the food might be responsible. Not long after, my brother-in-law and his wife arrived. We had a pleasant conversation, exchanging updates and laughter. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was busy in the kitchen, preparing the meal with practiced skill. Dish after dish appeared on the table, each one looking more appetizing than the last. Her home-cooked food had always been visually appealing, and tonight was no exception. It smelled wonderful, tasted just as good as ever, and yet, I still didn't know why I kept getting sick after eating it. As soon as we sat down, my mother-in-law turned to me with a warm smile. "Aubrey, you said you liked this dish, didn't you? I made it especially delicious today, so you should have some." I hesitated. I didn't know how to respond. Before I could say anything, my husband gently intervened. "Aubrey isn't feeling well today," he explained. "Let her take what she feels like eating when she's ready." But my mother-in-law wasn't one to back down easily. "Oh, but just a small portion should be fine, right?" she insisted, placing a plate with a slightly smaller serving in front of me. I was still debating what to do when my brother-in-law spoke up. "Aubrey, if you're not feeling well, don't force yourself. We've already greeted each other, so if you need to rest, please go home. Don't worry about us." It was clear that my husband had confided in his brother and sister-in-law about what had been happening. They seemed to be on my side, trying to support me. Realizing she wasn't going to convince me to eat right away, my mother-in-law sighed and said, "Well, if you're not eating now, just take it home with you." Something about the way she insisted I take the food struck me as odd, but since I wasn't planning on eating it, I didn't think too much of it. "All right, thank you," I replied. She got up and headed toward the cupboard to grab a container. That's when something completely unexpected happened. My father-in-law suddenly collapsed, tumbling from his chair. All eyes turned toward him as he clutched his stomach in agony. "What's wrong?" my husband shouted, rushing to his side. He hadn't even touched the food on the table yet. "What's happening?" Through gritted teeth, my father-in-law managed to gasp, I had a little taste of the food in the kitchen earlier. And now my stomach, it hurts so much." My mother-in-law's reaction was immediate. "You ate some of that," she muttered, her voice betraying a flicker of panic. I didn't miss the way she said it. Without wasting another second, my husband called an ambulance. My mother-in-law accompanied my father-in-law to the hospital, leaving the rest of us standing in stunned silence. But something about the whole situation didn't sit right with me. My brother-in-law's wife seemed to share my unease. "We should check the kitchen," she whispered. We nodded in agreement and cautiously made our way inside. What we found left us in shock. Without hesitation, we rushed to the hospital where my father-in-law had been taken. After checking in at the reception, we headed straight for his room. As we approached, we overheard a conversation inside. The doctor was asking my mother-in-law, "Do you have any idea what might have caused this?" She quickly shook her head. "I have no idea," she replied. The moment we stepped inside, her expression changed. She looked startled to see us. "Oh, you didn't have to come all this way," she said, trying to brush off our concern. "Everything's under control. I'm here to take care of him." But we weren't about to let this moment slip by. I took a step closer. "We need to talk." My husband, his brother, and my sister-in-law stood firmly behind me. "What's the meaning of this?" my mother-in-law demanded, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. Meanwhile, my father-in-law's condition had stabilized. His complexion was improving, but the doctors were still unsure of what had caused his sudden illness. "We found something in the kitchen," I said, pulling an object from my bag and holding it up for her to see. Her entire body tensed and she shifted uncomfortably. "Do you recognize this?" I asked, watching her reaction carefully. She hesitated. What is that?" she stammered. "This," I said firmly, "is a laxative, and we found a large amount of powdered laxatives hidden in the kitchen." Silence. Then the doctor spoke up. "That would explain his symptoms. We'll run some tests, but if we find traces of laxatives in his system, we'll have to investigate further. If he didn't take them knowingly, this could be considered intentional harm." Panic flashed across my mother-in-law's face. "No, it's not what you think," she blurted out. "I didn't mean for him to eat that food." My husband's eyes narrowed. "Then who was it meant for?" She fumbled for words. I. "If you don't tell the truth," my husband warned, "we'll have no choice but to involve the police." She finally cracked. "It was for Aubrey," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt my stomach drop. "You were trying to poison me." "I just wanted to teach you a lesson," she snapped. "Ever since you married my son, he's changed. He refused to live with us. He skipped the wedding. You're the reason he's become a bad son. You ruined everything." I was stunned. "You've been lacing my food with laxatives because you blame me for your son's choices." "It wasn't that much before," she muttered. "That's why you were fine." "Fine?" "I was rushed to the hospital." I shot back. My husband stepped forward, fury written all over his face. "I can't forgive you for what you've done to Aubrey." My brother-in-law shook his head in disgust. "If my wife had to go through this, I'd be just as furious." Then, in unison, they both declared, "We're cutting ties with you." My mother-in-law's face crumpled. "No, please, don't do this." And then my father-in-law, who had been awake long enough to hear everything, spoke up. "You've done something unforgivable out of your own selfishness," he said coldly. "You should be grateful we're not handing you over to the police." Her face turned pale. "You're not divorcing me, are you?" He didn't hesitate. "That's exactly what I'm doing. But first, you're going to pay Aubrey $30,000 in compensation. And don't think you can rely on me, I won't be helping you." "No, I've never worked before." "How am I supposed to do that?" she wailed. "Figure it out," he said sharply. "Either you pay up, or I turn you in." She had no choice but to work to repay me. Every penny she earned went straight toward her debt, with my father-in-law keeping a strict eye on her. As for me, I finally found peace. My husband and father-in-law assured me I never had to see her again. With them by my side, I knew I'd be just fine, no matter what the future held. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Stay tuned.